Louise's Inspirational Women Innovating STEM event. Before we formally start, just some housekeeping, some fairly standard Teams housekeeping. If you can turn your cameras and mics off, we'd be really grateful. Please do use the Q&A, the chat function, throughout today to submit questions. At the end of the presentation then, I will be putting questions to our speaker, Louise. Please do feel free to kind of unmute yourself and put your camera on if you have submitted a question, and maybe you can have a chat with Louise at that point. So mics off and cameras off throughout the presentation would be great, thank you. So to formally welcome you all here today, this event is hosted by the Wales Women in STEM network. I work with colleagues from across Wales on this network. We really want to kind of expose and address the barriers that face women working in STEM in Wales. And we really try hard to bring together people who are implementing change within the STEM sector. We want to create a positive environment in Wales where women and girls can thrive in their chosen careers in STEM. So this is one of the events that we're putting on in a series of events, really. And it's culminated because of the Wales STEM Awards. So these awards took place last year, and they were the first time Wales has had these STEM Awards. There were 16 categories, and I was really privileged to be a judge. Those 16 categories attracted hundreds of entries. And it's important to note they're across Wales, not women awards. These were awards for anybody. There were anybody in STEM. So an awful lot of entries. We shortlisted and we interviewed everybody who was shortlisted in those 16 categories. And what was amazing was the breadth and depth of real kind of STEM ambition in Wales, some of the great things that are happening. For me, it was amazing to hear from women who are achieving great things, sometimes, you know, facing huge barriers. It was really inspiring for me to hear those stories. Ultimately, I think the success comes down to people. And it really seemed to me that I wanted to spotlight, you know, I had 10, 15 minutes in a room with some of those that were shortlisted and became finalists, and some of them deserve so much more time. We can all learn so much from each other. And that's where these events have really come from. In introducing our speaker today, I wanted to talk to you a bit about the glass cliff concept. You probably all have heard of the glass ceiling, whereby, you know, women find it very hard to break through that ceiling and to kind of get into the upper levels of their chosen industry or career. Michelle Ryan is a professor in Exeter University, I think, and she describes the glass cliff. There were some interesting newspaper articles, I think over a decade ago, where somebody done research on FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 companies, so really big companies, and they'd found out that companies that were down the bottom of those kind of scales and that were not doing so well tended to have women in senior positions. And I think some of the newspaper headlines were "Women on board leads to poor company performance." That basically there was a correlation between having women in leadership roles correlating to not doing so well in business. Michelle Ryan and her colleagues really tackled that and actually found that women tended to be recruited for roles in organisations that were failing. So it's not that the women made them fail, they were coming in to really try and rescue the organisation, were coming into really, really difficult, challenging positions. So when I met Louise O'Shea and heard her speak, heard her story, this really echoed with me, this research. It reminded me of this research. I won't talk to you too much about Louise's story. I met Louise as she was nominated for STEM Leader, and Louise went on to win that category. She's CEO of Confused.com, and actually she talked about when she joined the organisation when they weren't doing so well. So I want to say thank you to Louise for giving us her time, and I'm sure you're all going to enjoy her talking to you about her experiences. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you for that intro, and hi everybody. Great to be here with you. I've actually got the award that I was given. It's fantastic. I love it. It's the only one I have in this little tiny box I'm in right now. And a little anecdote I was sharing with Louise just before you all joined us was that after I'd received it, I got quite a few congratulations notes from various colleagues, peers, people within my network. Unfortunately, quite a lot of those, especially from the men, said, "We're so pleased you were the female leader of STEM." I said, no, I had to correct them. I said, no, I was the overall. I competed against men and I won. You know, and I part of me quite enjoyed correcting them. Part of me was quite frustrated that I needed to correct them. And so therefore the importance of these types of events and more that Louise is organising, I think are still as relevant today as they have been in the past, and will continue to grow in importance. So look, thank you so much. It's great to be here. I genuinely felt extremely honoured when I received the award. And I also feel very, very privileged to be surrounded by all of you. And I'm looking forward to some conversations and questions at the end. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And so I am the CEO of a national technology company, Confused.com. And I'll talk about my experiences in technology. And I know you'll be hearing from other ladies from across the STEM sectors in a series of talks. So I'll be much more kind of focused on that technology space. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about today, this song popped into my head, and it's from the 1970s, which is a little bit before my time, but hopefully you guys will have heard of it, or you'll certainly recognize possibly the words. So it's actually a song by Helen Reddy, and it's called "I Am Woman, I Am Strong." And I actually remember it from one of the Sex and the City films. And I don't know if, like me, I used to watch Sex and the City and the movies with a bunch of girlfriends, and we'd often work out who each other was. I don't think you'll be surprised, I don't know, but I was Miranda in our little group, and it's just a little memory, and I hope that many of you can kind of relate to that. But that song, that "I Am Woman," it's a bit cheesy at times, but some of the lyrics really do strike a chord. I am woman, I am strong, I am invincible. And I did a bit of research, and the inspiration behind the song came from Helen Reddy, the writer. She wasn't able to relate to any songs that were around in the 1970s about what it's like to be a woman. She said most of the songs were about feeling pretty, or being downtrodden or brokenhearted. There was nothing out there that was a signal to strong women, that the strong women that had gotten people through the Great Depression, that had helped win the world wars. And so she really wanted to write something that reflected that. It actually went on to become an anthem for women's liberation and empowerment. And I think that's just really interesting to note that it was one woman deciding to break the mold, who went on to inspire hundreds and maybe thousands of other women. And I think that's something that we can all take as a lesson into our companies, into our friendship groups, into all walks of life that we have. STEM, as we know, is traditionally a male industry. But I'm here, I'm the CEO of a tech company, and I'm standing amongst other women who are all defying that stereotype. We're defining new stereotypes, and we're paving a way in STEM. So Helen Reddy, she broke that glass ceiling with her song, and her action inspired others to take a stand. And I think that's really important. When we see other women succeed, we're inspired to do the same, because it's showing us what is possible. And there's a real purpose there. There's a purpose behind why it's more important. Why is it more important to have more women working in STEM? Well, it's important for lots of different reasons, but it's so that we can represent everybody that we're providing these industries for. From our point of view, we're providing technology solutions, we're providing products. We want to make sure they're representing all of the people that we're working with, all of our customers. So it's really important that women are in every single industry that there is. We need to be there. We need to be part of innovating in those industries, part of deciding the right direction, making the decisions. We need to be present. And unfortunately, in the tech space, we know that only 17% of the UK's IT specialists are actually female. But there are huge vacancies, huge dearth of skill sets here. So there's massive opportunity for women as well. There's actually a worldwide tech shortage, skills shortage of about 85 million people. That's what we're going to need by 2030. So there's a huge untapped potential for women to enter the industry and succeed in the industry. And the industry really, really does need them. So in Wales, we do have an incredible STEM community, and I think it's one that's really putting us on the map, and those awards really started to highlight some of that. We've got national and innovative companies that are being formed here who are choosing to make Wales a home. And I think it's important that I'm hearing so if you could go on mute, that would be great. It's important that the Wales STEM Awards highlights all of that, because it draws attention to all of those different companies, all of those different businesses, as well as the individuals, be they men or women, who are succeeding in the field. In terms of inspiring women to come and work in STEM, it's a job for all of us. So it's a job for everybody on this call. It's not just something that it rests on my shoulders or Louise's shoulders. And I think it's just really important to note there was a line in the song from Helen's song which said, "You can bend but never break me, because it only serves to make me more determined to achieve my final goal." And what I take from that is that in order to be here and be where I am a strong person. I am a strong individual. And all of you are strong individuals, and you're pushing to break boundaries, you're pushing to succeed. But actually, what's better in order to achieve that final goal is about all of us doing it together. And inspiring more women to join our industry has to be a shared goal. We want to, as an industry, achieve greater diversity, greater representation, and greater talent. And that does mean bringing more women, as well as many, many more diverse people into the industries. So I want to focus now on what we can all do. So it's not just, I want you guys to take something away as well and do something different. And I think the first of all is you are ambassadors for STEM, you're ambassadors for the organizations you represent. So have a look and understand the different ways that you can help. So look at things like organizations that do actively address gender imbalance in STEM. Look for opportunities to educate the next generation about what you do, what your skills are, what your role is. Demonstrate the value of STEM to the younger generation in terms of in schools, in universities. Educate your own family members. I have 2 young daughters, and I'm constantly talking to them about maths and sciences. So be a mentor yourself. Whether we help develop people that work with us who want to transition into tech roles, or whether we're using platforms like LinkedIn, push out these messages. Please help to change perceptions. And think about the language that we're using when we're talking about STEM, because it's not what people traditionally think about. It's not it's not all hard hats and overalls. Skill sets that are needed in STEM, they're about making progress, making breakthroughs, curiosity, abilities to think, be professional problem solvers. And I think that just bring that to light for other people, so they understand that any traditional barriers they might have put in their way are broken down. So I'm looking to all of you to invoke a little bit of inspiration across all of the interactions you have with others. Educate people in STEM, and that the fact that these skills are relevant across all industries. If you think about those, science, technology, engineering, maths, it's relevant across all industries now. I'll talk about my journey for a moment, and I'll be completely open and frank with you guys. And I didn't enjoy maths. I didn't enjoy science when I was at school. I loved history and I loved geography. And I went on to study history at university. But for me, I discovered that there's room to upskill and cross-skill, you know, and I found that. And if I hadn't found that, I'd have probably be a history teacher right now, which would have been a great job, but it wouldn't have pushed me into all of these opportunities that I've had. And I think recognize that there's always opportunity to segue into new industries, to learn completely new skills. And what you need in order to do it, you need yourself to recognize that, and then you need to go and find the support for it. After completing my degree, I knew that I wanted to have a big impact in the future, and I couldn't quite understand that, but I knew that that was going to be somewhere in the business sector. So I went on to train as an accountant, maths, data, statistics, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. I hadn't enjoyed it, but I could do it. It wasn't something that I wasn't capable of doing, which is good news. Shortly after that, I realized that there was another area I traditionally shied away from, and that was technology. So I wanted to grow in that area. I wanted to understand it more. I wanted to grow my skill set. And I also recognized that other women tended to shy away from it. But if I could understand finance and I could understand technology, then I felt I'd be in a much stronger position to be a leader in the future. So I love a challenge. So I decided I would do exactly that. It actually happened through a blind interview. So I went to a job not knowing what the company was, and it ended up being a very well-known tech company. And I had no experience. I'd never worked in tech, but I knew I wanted to upskill myself. I quickly fell in love with everything that was possible, everything that we were doing, everything that it opened up to me, and understanding what we can achieve when we have technology to work with. So for me, a journey into technology, it started off with history, and I ended up looking for a technology role. And I knew, why did I want that? For me, that part of the industry, it's constantly being challenged, it's constantly innovating, it's constantly changing. And that is a really exciting prospect for me. Let's fast forward. So I decided to apply for the role as CEO, and Louise's anecdote there about the research definitely rings true. I was actually 8 months pregnant when I applied for the role as CEO of Confused.com. At the time, I had a daughter, and she was about just under 2 years old. And Confused.com was facing one of its worst financial years on record. But I was crazy enough to say, I absolutely want that job. And not only was I crazy enough to kind of take on such a huge challenge, but I was also doing it with a newborn baby. So with very, very little sleep, how I thought I would be able to focus on turning a company around, I don't know. So I definitely must have been crazy. But also I knew that I really wanted to do it. And I knew that these types of opportunities don't come along very often. They should come along more often, but the truth of the matter is that they don't. My first day in the office, I had to take the baby, Emmy. She had to come with me. She was 8 weeks old, because my husband, who was supposed to be doing childcare, let me down. And obviously that was quite stressful, but I had a whole team of women that rallied around me to support me and cheer me on, and quite literally hold the baby whilst I spoke. And the words from Helen's song, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, that is how I felt on that first day in the office, standing in front of the 250 people I was now in charge of leading, to pull them out of what was a pretty horrendous year for financial results. And when that team of people came around to help me with my childcare and literally help me to do my job as a CEO, I knew that that was going to be the answer to solving the problem, having the very best team around me. It was extremely stressful, and I didn't sleep very much, and I can't even blame Emmy on that, because she was a great sleeper. It was the stress of running the company, and it was the stress of thinking, am I making the right decision? As a leader, I don't think you're actually doing your job if you're not staying up at night worrying about the decisions you're making, because you're not making the difficult ones if that's not the case. I was really driven by both my desire to disrupt the status quo and disrupt the idea that this couldn't be done and that I couldn't be successful in this role, which many people did feel. But also for me, the most fundamental one was actually improving the lives of everyone around me and everyone who worked in Confused.com, as well as the fortune of all of our customers. So I'm talking to you guys today, and I know we're all part of that same movement. We all want the same thing. We want to create more inspirational female figures in our STEM community. We want to create more opportunities for women in our industries. And I truly believe we can do that when we come together and work together on it. Networks like these, organizations, initiatives, we can actively participate in them. I mean, there's a few for you guys to take away. There's the Tech Talent Charter, which works to drive greater diversity and inclusion. There's things like the Cardiff Commitment, which gives members of my team in Confused.com the chance to go and speak to school children about their industry and their role. But also in your own office, in your own environment, there's things that you can do. In Confused.com, we set up what we called the School of Tech, and it paired non-tech people with tech staff to learn how to use different areas to their benefit. So we focused on machine learning and automation and how can we help non-tech people understand the potential and then use it to benefit them. We ensured that we had a 50-50 cohort, men and women, going through that because I knew women tended to shy away from understanding technology. We've now grown that School of Tech has become a Confused.com university, which has got modules on technology as well as data, as well as design. We've had marketing specialists transition to become technology engineers. We've had ladies join our tech department who have previously been nurses. And I think we've actually got an actress somewhere amongst our technology rank now. So show that and highlight that to your team and create these initiatives that won't just benefit the women in your organization, they're also going to benefit the men, they're going to benefit everybody. So I believe there's a lot we can do to help our own staff, our team members and our colleagues develop STEM skills, and that we've got to take every opportunity to do so. And then we've got to use our platform to share those ideas with other people. I'm not going to talk about the dreaded C word, as in, you know, the pandemic that we've all been in, but I am going to talk about 2020. Because it has been a remarkable year. It's been remarkable for good and bad reasons. I want to pick up on the point about during this time of turmoil, the way that we have adapted to home working, I believe is really going to help women going forward. Admittedly, right now, it isn't, because it is pushing more working women back into the role of overseeing childcare. I can attest to that. I have been in and out of meetings all day, doing the lion's share of homeschooling as well, whereas it just seems to wash over my husband's head. So that is a concern right now, because we know, and we've got ONS figures that are backing that up, 2/3 of women are taking on the majority of these duties. But what I think is positive, and I am optimistic for the future, is how much the pandemic has accelerated remote working. And it's accelerated it by almost a decade. And we've seen just quick adoption to it, not just technology, but company culture, managers being more confident that they can still achieve their results with people working outside of the office. People being much more productive and happier under a flexible working model. And that's really, really important, because that's really going to help working mothers and working parents in the future. And particularly if we're no longer having to homeschool. So I think that's a really good, optimistic thought. And it's something to be thankful for, something to look forward to in the future. In addition to that, I really want to emphasize the importance of breaking through of some of those invisible barriers. So bringing a female perspective to the table, not feeling ashamed to raise that point from your point of view. Don't think you have to adopt a male point of view on things. Actually, you bring incredible value. Women generally have much higher EQ, and we've got to bring that to the fore. I want you to not only do that for yourself, but I want by doing that, you're going to inspire others around you to do it. Because as you will know, when you watch other women and when you stand alongside them and when you join them, that inspires you yourself to be better. So use your platform, no matter if it's a big platform or a small platform, it doesn't matter. Share it, stand up, be a leader. You don't have to be running a team to be a leader. Just stand up and say what you think is the right thing to do. Remember, I am woman, I am strong, and we are women, and we are STEM. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for inspiring me to do more and do better. I hope I can inspire you to use your platforms to inspire others. And if you do anything today, if you take anything out, just go and play the song, I am woman, I am strong. Go and have a dance around your respective home office, because we all need a little bit of fun, a little bit of inspiration every day. And believe me, it will put a smile on your face. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much for your time. It's very echoey. Better? Yes. No, thank you, Louise, for your time today, and thank you. I'm so glad we had you first, because you know that while you were as inspirational as you were at that interview where I first met you, you know, that inspiration comes across now. And I think your kind of challenge to make all of us realise that we can all do something. You know, it might be small, but it might have a huge impact on somebody. You know, that's a really positive message that we can all take away. Thank you for being so open with us about your experience. So if I can remind everybody here today, just use the chat function to pose any questions, and I'll pose those for you. But in the meantime, we've got a couple of questions that came in advance that I can ask you, Louise. The first is, what advice would you give to your younger self as a woman entering the STEM industry?
Good question. And let me just take a moment. I think for me, it would be about always pushing yourself to do more and do better, and looking at those job specs and never, and this is, you'll have heard this before, don't think about all the things you can't do on it. If you're looking at a new opportunity, don't sit there and look at everything and go, well, I don't know how to do that, and I don't know how to do this, and I'm not sure if I'm good enough. Don't do that. Focus on the things that you have done. And there's another piece of pop culture from a movie I've seen where she lays in bed at night and she lists all the things she didn't achieve that day. And I do it every night. You know, I haven't done this. I haven't made sure Bronwyn's read 2 books. You know, I haven't done this piece of work. I haven't sent this email. I could have done better in that meeting. Take a moment and just list all the things you did do well, because you'll have done an awful lot incredibly well, and give yourself recognition and for that, because we don't, as women, we don't do that. Our natural inclination is to always list everything we haven't done and everything we haven't done as well as we thought we could do. Give yourself a break, I think, is probably my biggest piece of advice.
Thank you, Louise. We've got a question from Lara, and Lara's with us today. So Lara says, I'm a mum to be and loved hearing that you went through a huge career leap with a young baby. I just wondered what your #1 advice would be for new mums wanting to also step forward in their careers.
Oh, well, congratulations, Lara, and good luck with everything. What advice for new mums? I think, especially when it's your first child, it is such a shock to the system when you have a kid. It really does kind of like it did me anyway. It completely floored me the first time around. And you also, when you're out of the working environment, you get a bit paranoid because you don't know what's going on back at the ranch. And what I would say, recognize all of that is perfectly normal, perfectly natural. Speak to other women who are going through the same thing, because it's completely normal. And then focus on recognizing that is why I'm feeling like that. You know, it's actually that everybody thinks I'm still brilliant at my job. They don't think just because you're not there, you're not capable anymore. So that's just you creating that story in your head. Maybe this is just me, but that's the kind of like self-doubt. And so recognize what it is, label it, and say that's why I'm feeling that way. and keep in touch with your work, your colleagues, and what you want to do, so that you feel more confident when you're going back into your role. Take a moment when you are out of the office as well to upskill yourself and think about what you want to do. I had a lot of sleepless nights with my first child, and I would be there watching TED Talks at like 2 a.m. as I'm trying to feed her and things like that. And so take those crazy moments to upskill yourself and get inspiration and learning from elsewhere. So I think, does that answer? I'm not sure if that answers the question, but good luck. I never forget when I celebrated getting my CEO job. I had Emmy in my hands, and I had a gin and tonic and a bowl of crunchy nut cornflakes. And it wasn't because it was in the morning, it was because I hadn't made any dinner. So dinner was crunchy nut cornflakes was a classic dinner in my house when you've got a young kid. Just like I said, give yourself a bigger break because you've got a lot on your hands.
Louise, there's a question from Louise, who's also on the call with us today. It's a really good question. Louise says, I wonder if you have any advice for moving past the feeling of imposter syndrome when entering a new field, new job, etc.
That's a great question. It's the classic, you fake it till you make it. And it is just get feedback from people, because what you will realize when you start, I think the key is, no matter how many times you can say it yourself, actually when you hear it from someone else, it will really help you to kind of build your confidence. I have what's called a rainy day folder in my email inbox, and if I get a really nice email or just a note and I've had some nice feedback, even if it's been verbal, I'll maybe write a note to myself and say, so and so said this, and that will help me. And if I'm having a rainy day, if I'm having a bad day, I'll go back into that folder just for that little boost, that little kick of confidence, that little reminder to say, no, I can do this. I'm not an imposter here, that I am here for a reason, and other people see that too. So I think I'd definitely kind of advise that. And I think if it's a Louise that's working in my organization, you're absolutely not an imposter. You're fabulous.
Thank you, Louise. Louise commented, I loved that, thank you. I wanted to ask, we've both talked about, what those little things that we can do as individuals to maybe help. When you get into a position like yours now, Louise, you've got the potential to do big things in your organisation to help lots of women. Have you got any advice on how how do you do those things? How do you get those through? Particularly, part of what I'm sensing in my organisation now is, oh God, why do you need another one of those things for women again? What about everyone else?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting challenge, and it's something I struggled with when I joined Confused.com. I joined as a finance director for a short period of time, and at that point I used my platform to reach out to all of the other women, and I kind of created this kind of quasi female kind of like network just through the odd email, kind of saying, guys, have you read this? Have you seen that? But then actually when I became the CEO, I was very conscious to say, actually, I need to be much more inclusive, because I need to make sure that it is about everybody, and it is about everybody. But there's also opportunities for women to get that extra boost, and we should do that. And I think actually I would love, and I kind of say in my organization to lots of senior females, say I can't actually do that anymore because I'm the CEO. It would be seen as favoritism if I was sending out emails just to my women. But please do it. There's nothing to stop you guys from doing that. You're not all CEOs. That's the nature of the world. So take that opportunity. Nobody's going to stop you from reaching out to other women and creating these informal networks. And then when it comes to organizationally approved things, I think there is a piece there, Louise, where there is an element about making sure that it's diversity of thought. It does include lots of groups, and I think it's making sure that the senior stakeholders agree with that direction of travel. They agree with diversity of thought. They agree that actually they understand that why there's, in the case of STEM, there's a specific female issue, but there's also specific issues around the BAME community. We have STEM has lots of challenges from that point of view, and as long as they understand why there's an issue and the benefits then of what these things do. And I think that's the other thing, is kind of saying is we're not just talking for talking's sake. Actually, by doing this, it meant A, B, and C. Then I think it's easy to get senior stakeholders bought in. So I guess my two sides are: take the initiative, create things that don't need organizational permission, just take the initiative and do that. And then separately, when something does need more, maybe it's money or whatever it might need, then really laying out the case and making sure it is representative for everybody, I think, are the key things there.
Thanks, Louise. You're in a particular area. You're in the tech industry, insurance industry, and they're both very competitive markets to be in. With everything else, how do you manage to kind of keep ahead of the game? How do you manage to have that point of difference?
It's a great question. Yeah, we're in financial services, we're in technology. It's a very fast moving and highly competitive. I think we're in the most competitive market, I would say, in the world. Google and Tesco both entered our markets and failed, so it gives you a sense of how tough it is. And Confused.com, and you mentioned, and I talked briefly about it, was having a really tough time when I took over 3 years ago. And we've managed to, I can't release all the numbers, but we've seen 20% growth in revenue per annum, 40% growth in profit per annum. So big turnaround numbers. And that really comes from having a very clear purpose and having a very strong team to execute on the plans that are required to achieve that purpose. And for us, our purpose is very clear. It's very motivating. It's about standing up and helping customers to stand up to these big financial institutions, because there's an imbalance of power. And if anything upsets me, it's having an imbalance of power, and let's fight for the little guy. And so that's very clear there. And so then how do we do that? And we have lots of different ideas and different plans, but actually the key is then, what is your team, and are they strong enough to execute on that? And are they working collaboratively? Are they ambitious? Are they resilient? And actually then building that team around you. And so whatever industry you're in, I think the secret there, that secret source of purpose and team, can apply wherever you are.
Thank you. I think the last question that we've got, and it's a nice question to end on: what is the biggest lesson you've learnt throughout your career?
The biggest lesson is I guess there's two really, and they're interlinked actually, because the biggest lesson is about that team and having the very strongest team around you. And then linked to that is when it's not what it needs to be, either because of individuals or because the individuals themselves can be great, but it just doesn't work in that context, then you have to move quickly to sort it out. Otherwise you're basically trying to run a race with one leg kind of in chains. And so for me, that's it. And they will be really tough decisions, and honestly, I can't tell you the number of nights I have laid in wait and the decisions tend to be the ones where they're impacting individuals. When you're making a decision, you say, actually, what, this person should no longer be working in my organization. And that's a big decision to make, because it has implications for that individual, it has implications for their family, it has implications for the people that they've worked with. But actually, when you make that decision, I'm saying you know that you're making the right decision, you stress over it, you make the right decision, and then everything gets better. And I think so I guess the biggest lesson I've learned is do that, and do that as soon as you possibly can.
Louise, thank you ever so much for your time today, and thank you for being so open and sharing your experience with us so candidly. I hope everybody got as much from that as I did. So thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Before we go, I'm going to send out an email to everybody who's come today, just to highlight a few things. I think Louise mentioned a few initiatives there, so we'll make sure that we jot those down and get those sent out to you. Louise talked a lot about making sure that we get out there, that, we push ourselves forward and we push other women forward. Wales STEM Awards was successful last year and will be open soon this year. So we will send you some information about how you go about either nominating yourself or colleagues for any one of those 16 categories. It would be great to see, really good examples of women leading the way in all of those categories. And also to remind you that this is a series of talks. Louise has kicked us off. Next week on the 21st, we've got Dr. Emma Saunders, who's one of the leaders of Genesis Bioscience. So slightly different area of STEM, but equally as interesting and I hope as inspirational. So I've thanked Louise, but I also want to thank those that you probably haven't seen behind the scenes. Katrina and her team on the technical side of things, thank you so much. And Amber for all of the organisation behind these events. They wouldn't happen without her. And lastly, thank you to everybody who's actually not gone for a walk and not left their desks and taken this time for themselves to join us. We're really, really grateful. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.